So as the Canadian TV bracket has gotten further along, tensions have been flaring. I mean, we all have shows that were so central to our memory of growing up in Canada, and it's sort of divided by age. I didn't realize, for instance, that so many people I knew watched The Beachcombers. That was always a channel changer when I was a little kid. But now that we're down to the final four, emotions are running pretty high. Friendships are being shattered, marriages torn apart. I mean, these are tough choices, and I have my pick for which show I think should win.
Wake up in the morning, gotta shake the feeling. I gotta face the day of school. What's to be afraid of? I can ask a question, or maybe even bend the rules. I'm searching for a place where I'll fit in.
How seriously I take this became obvious to me when a friend of mine who usually has really good opinions said something kind of disparaging about Degrassi. And yeah, I'll admit it, I kind of went off on Twitter. But that's because Degrassi was special to me in a way no other show has been. And my affinity for it now isn't just nostalgia for a Canadian show I loved as a kid, it's also a deep appreciation for what Degrassi meant and what it accomplished for youth media as a whole. See, our culture often devalues teen media, treats it as unserious, something to be mocked. And to be fair, there have been a lot of pretty bad shows aimed at youth, but Degrassi wasn't one of those. Where many other teen shows are melodramatic or kind of slapsticky, Degrassi was honest, it was real, and it was groundbreaking. And that is why I would like to make my pitch now for why you should vote Degrassi into the final. And by the way, pretty much all of the old Degrassi episodes are on YouTube if you want to refresh your memory. See, Degrassi was the show that prepared me for teenage life when nothing else did. The first person I knew who had an abortion was Erica. The first person I knew who committed suicide was Claude. The first person I knew who was HIV positive was Dwayne. And when we learned that Wheels was adopted, I was so excited because he was the first kid I saw on TV who was adopted like me, and we actually got to see him struggle with it. Over the course of just 5 seasons, Degrassi dealt with dozens of challenging topics like this: domestic violence, child sexual abuse, addiction, disability, homosexuality, abortion, HIV, sexism, racism. And in a lot of these cases, it was the first show aimed at youth to do so. The episode where Spike learns that she's pregnant, that was the first time a TV drama with a contemporary setting had shown a teen pregnancy, and it won an Emmy for that episode. And who else in the late 1980s was showing kids the realities of dating violence or about drugs? This was the era when the most we heard about drugs was Just Say No and...
Okay, last time. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
We take some of this for granted now. Today there's a lot of media for teens that deals with all these topics and at a way more advanced stage of discussion. But that's in part because Degrassi helped open the way to have these conversations. We didn't have the internet back then, not the same way we do now. As kids, our information was so much more controlled, so much more restricted. And Degrassi was nearly alone in trusting young people enough to believe that we could actually handle these topics. For that, parts of some episodes were actually censored in some countries, including in the United States. And Degrassi was real in a way that a lot of shows before and after weren't. The cast was regular kids. They weren't seasoned youth actors. They didn't have Hollywood looks or polish. They didn't look like the actors on Beverly Hills 90210, many of whom were in their 20s when that show started. The actors on Degrassi looked like us. They slouched like us. They were awkward in their bodies the same ways that we were. You know Spike's famous punk rock hairdo? That was the actor's real hairdo in high school. In more recent interviews, the actors said they would actually give significant input into scripts, telling the writers that kids their age wouldn't say or do the things they had originally been scripted. It gave voice to young people. The actor who played Yik once said that he asked the writers to add a scene where Yik gets an earring because his real-life dad wouldn't let him. So these are real teens doing real teen things. And that's probably why, although the characters did fit certain archetypes, they weren't caricatures. There was no Screech, for instance. Nobody with a ridiculous tagline. There was Joey Jeremiah's hat, but I mean, that's kind of a real thing that real kids did. I mean, my signature clothing item in high school was these gigantic bell bottoms you could fit your entire body into. And the show's storylines were rarely based around slapstick or wild and unrealistic schemes. I mean, sometimes that played a role, but when I look back on my own teen years, most of the things that happened in Degrassi really happened to me or people I knew or some version of it. But what was most special about Degrassi was that it wasn't preachy. Degrassi was not a show about black and white, right or wrong. It dealt in shades of gray, and that's evident in how the show handled some of the most controversial topics. When Erica is pregnant, her twin sister goes to Spike, hoping that Spike will talk Erica out of having an abortion. After all, Spike decides to continue her pregnancy and become a parent, but Spike refuses, and she tells Heather why.
I mean, it's great to have, high ideals and stuff, but when you're in that situation, right and wrong, they can get really complicated.
Over and over, that same theme about gray areas, about everyone just trying to fumble through the best they can, comes up in all sorts of situations. When Caitlin finds out her mom knows about her dad's affair, she's stunned when her mom plans to stay in the marriage. But her mom explains that no, it's complicated, that this is a 20-year marriage, it's a hard decision, but it's hers to make. And when the girls' volleyball team stands up against sexist treatment from the school sports department, Lucy has to argue against the guy she has a crush on who just asked her to the spring dance. And he cancels their date afterwards. Now, it would have been really easy for the show to wrap that up with Lucy and her friends saying, good riddance. But instead we see Lucy recording this video for her best friend LD.
So here I am, once again, dateless wonder. I keep telling myself I should be proud for standing up for what I believe in. And I guess I am. But LD, I really wanted to go to that stupid dance.
By the way, probably the best actor in the series. But the point is, that's what Degrassi did well. It showed us that as we grew up, decisions became more complicated. That sometimes we may do the right thing, but we wouldn't necessarily feel good about it. And sometimes we may do the wrong thing, but it didn't mean we were bad people. And that was central to Degrassi. The show loved its characters and wanted the best for them, but the writers recognized that they wouldn't all end up in the best place. In season 2 of Degrassi High, Wheels really starts self-destructing. He's struggling with the death of his parents, with his adoption, and the thing is, it hurts us to watch because we care about Wheels. By that point, we know he's not a bad person. He's just a person who isn't dealing with his pain in a healthy way. And Neil Hope, the actor who played Wheels, died alone in 2007. Even his own family didn't know he had died for over 4 years. He was just 35 years old. So that part about Wheels' pain, that was real too. So even in struggle, that was the magic of Degrassi. The characters weren't always kind to each other, they didn't always do the right things, and there wasn't always a moment at the end of the episode where they learned a tidy lesson wrapped in a bow. They were allowed to be people, and they were allowed to be normal teens, and we saw that they were still worthy of care. Degrassi loved its characters, and by extension all young people, enough to tell us the truth when no one else really wanted to be that blunt. It told us that life was going to get harder and scarier and more complicated, but that we were going to find a way to get through it. And it told us that we were going to screw up and make mistakes and get hurt, but that we still deserved compassion. And it may be easy to look back on it now and see its flaws, the production values, some cheesy writing, some kind of wooden acting, but they were just kids, and besides, that's judging it by the wrong set of criteria. Because what made Degrassi special, and why it deserves to make the final, and I would argue win the Canadian TV bracket, is that it was brave. It was brave to go out and address real topics that kids were dealing with that, at that time, most youth programming wouldn't touch. It was brave to be honest. It was brave to orient itself around the belief that young people were smart enough to hear the truth of what life was all about. Degrassi helped change the very way we think about youth programming and paved the way for everything that came after. And not only in Canada. My So-Called Life came out 4 years after Degrassi was over, and many critics consider Degrassi a major influence on that show. And Aaron Spelling reportedly watched a lot of Degrassi, and you can clearly see the influences in the early seasons of Beverly Hills 90210, which debuted the year before Degrassi ended. But he got the heart of it wrong. Beverly Hills was a soap opera about almost uniformly gorgeous rich kids, but Degrassi wasn't about melodrama or glamour, it was about connection. Degrassi changed how we think about its genre of programming. It broke down boundaries, it confronted a changing world head on, and it did so without hesitation, shame, or judgment. And by doing so, it announced a new era for youth programming, one that acknowledged young people's fears and challenges as valid and worthy of attention. There's actually a video out there where Beverly Hills 90210 actor Jenny Garth says her show was the first one that ever took young people's issues seriously, but she's wrong. That show was Degrassi, and without it, youth programming might have taken a lot longer to catch up to young people's lives. And for that reason, it should be crowned our most memorable Canadian TV show.
The Degrassi sensation is the one and only. The Zits are here. Everybody wants something they'll never give up. Everybody wants something they'll take your money and never give up. Everybody face up to the facts as they are. Dedication is hard, but you'll be somebody, and you will go far. Everybody wants something they'll never give up. Everybody wants something they'll take your money and never give, and never give, and never give up.
Joey, if this video doesn't impress Caitlin, nothing will.
Way to go, Joey.
All right.